Hi, welcome back to Bexhill West. I'm James. So firstly, an apology. I know it's been I think 4 weeks now since I last uploaded a video, and I've really fallen behind my own sort of ambitions of, at one point I was uploading weekly and I thought that might become unsustainable, but it's been a month, so my apologies for that. Now, I've been very busy working on things for the channel, but sometimes life just gets in the way, and although I think I've got 3 videos that are almost ready to publish, but for want of, one of them's held up for some materials, the other one I need to speak to somebody about a detail, and another one requires a site visit. So whilst those things are happening, those videos have been delayed, so my apologies for it being so long. Anyway, even though there haven't been videos, I have been very busy. So what I'm going to do today is show you, we're going to revisit a project with the carriages. I'll show you what my progress with that has been, and we'll have another look at the little ballast vacuum tool. My last video was very popular, loads of great feedback, and it prompted me to sort of develop the idea a little bit further, and so I'll show you where I'm at with that. That's almost at the point of my being able to sort of release the files and what have you, so hopefully we'll have another look at that, and that might clarify sort of a couple of questions that have come out of the last video. Now, what I will also mention is that, and this really is, it's not really anyone's business on YouTube to know this, but I mention it. I'm in the process of moving house, and for that reason, a few weeks ago, I had to pack up lots of Bexhill West and its sort of associated paraphernalia that I've been working on, just whilst the home visits were being done and stuff, in preparation for the sale. So that's, I think, seems to be going ahead, fingers crossed, swimmingly, and so hopefully in a few weeks' time that process will have completed and I'll be able to get everything out again, and we'll carry on exactly where we'd sort of left off. So if anyone's wondering why it's gone a bit quiet, that's the reason why. Now, I've kept the board with the station building on, that's still out and live, and I'm working on that. In fact, one of the videos that I just mentioned is all around that board, so there's more Bexhill West content hopefully to fill in the intervening weeks. It's not here today. Anyway, let's get on with the video, and we'll begin by having a look at those carriages. So regular viewers will remember that one of my ambitions for the project was to recreate a particular train which ran in October of 1958. It was a rail tour. It was known as the Rother Valley Rail Tour, and for that I need to create an engine, which we'll talk about shortly, and I also want to create some carriages. So the carriages that what they were basically these high window style carriages, the bulk of them. There was one additional one which we'll perhaps talk about in a moment. The trouble with these ones that are commercially available is that they are the slightly wider version. I think this is a restriction 3 carriage, whereas the ones that ran on sort of the Hastings line were restriction 0, and they had narrower bodies. And I made a video previously about how I intend to produce my own bodies to fit a commercially available chassis. Well, thanks to the very kind efforts of one of the viewers, Steve, I now have the full set of carriages that I need to rebuild, and the plan is to, let's pop this one away, the plan is to disassemble the carriages, just as I've done with this example, and create new bodies for it. Now, once I had these carriages, I spent some time, I've completely redrawn these on the computer in order to make sure that the pieces that I've designed that will sort of fit onto here are going to be accurate. And something that's quite pleasing is that this interior detail is going to fit with what I have in mind. So that's great. Now, I'd hoped by now to have got those cast, but as I alluded to at the start of this episode, I've sort of been busy with other things. But what I have done is design a complete set of overlays that will fit on this interior, but sort of be like water slide transfers, which will have the sort of correct wood panelling and stuff like that, and sort of recolour the insides of these a bit, and I might find a few people and stick inside here. So those bits will be quite straightforward, and the design work for that is all complete. So the next thing really is to get onto these bodies. Now, if you've watched my previous video, which I'll link in the description, my plan is to 3D print a tool that I can use to cast new sides. But on sort of getting one of these carriages and stripping it down, taking the door handles and the roof ventilators off, I realised that there's an awful lot of shape and detail in here which would be nice to make use of. And so I wondered, could I just cut the sides out? And of course that is an option. I could cut the sides out and maybe just use an etched brass side panel. But what I'm thinking is I'll try and make a cast, an accurate pattern of this, which I can set up on the milling machine and mill away the sides and then sort of inlay my sort of 3D printed sides and then take a mould from it again, and hopefully we'll be able to produce some carriages that way. So a slight change of plan. In fact, I'm going to try it with the method I described previously and with this new method. So really the thing was to how was I going to set this up to take a casting of it. So for that I've created a little casting box. Now I'll run a little clip showing you what's going on in here. This has got some captive nuts in, so if I play a quick clip you'll be able to see sort of where those captive nuts go and how that works. Okay then, so the principle behind this is that this block is going to fit inside this carriage body, and it does fit. It's quite a tight fit. Now when I come to cast these, obviously I want it to be a tight fit, and I'm going to have to fill any gaps. And there's a couple of little details, little pips on the inside of here where the glazing detail, where it clips into the underframe. So I need to take those off. I don't know if the camera will be able to show this, but as it currently is, they're causing the bodywork to bow out slightly in the centre, but that's okay, we can fix that. So that then will all secure onto this base plate using the screws into the captive nuts that I've just shown you. And for the purposes of this, I'll remove this from here. Blimey, that is a tight fit. There we go, let's get it out. Good. Right, so I'll fit this up and then we'll show you how the box goes together. So these are the parts that are going to make the casting box that I'm going to use to create the pattern from the original railway carriage. And as is usual with things that I do, I've managed to completely over-engineer this. But I've tried to make it so that it will hold itself together. Now each end, when it's locked together, gets tied in with a little cross piece, comes through here, and a little tapered locking tab which will drop in from behind. So there is some method to the over-engineering, the idea being that this unit, once it's assembled, will hold itself together so that I don't have to wrestle with a floppy set of parts. So there we go, that then drops into the base, and there are some locking tabs that go in underneath as well. Now I'll just use one screw for the minute because I made a small error here, easily fixed. I put the hole in the wrong place. These don't match up, I don't know if you can see that, but it does in the centre, so we'll just use the centre one for now. And now our carriage insert will screw in. So just for the purposes of this, I'll just put the one screw in. Now imagine when I fit this up for the actual casting the mould, I will of course have the carriage body mounted on that centrepiece. Now if we just take a quick look inside, I don't know if you'll be able to see, I've engraved into the box centre lines down the centre of the, let's turn this around so you can maybe see it. There is an engraved centre line that runs down the whole of the box, and that will be picked up in the silicone rubber mould that I make, and that will just help give me a nice sort of reference. I intend to do this in one piece, and I won't, I mean, one idea is to separate it and make a two-piece mould. I won't be doing that. It'll be a one-piece mould, and the carriage body will sit inside something like that. Now the idea here is that I can just pour my silicone in, my silicone rubber. When that cures, I'll be able to remove the plastic body, and I'll have a rubber block with a perfect sort of negative image of the carriage. That rubber block will then be able to go in this same moulding box, which will clip into the base frame upside down. That's why there are these tabs on the top. And I'll be able to fill that with resin and cast a solid resin body. And so that will be the first step, to make a solid body which I can then mill away the sides. So if we imagine this a solid piece of polyurethane resin, I'll be able to mill away the sides and insert my either 3D printed or cast or etched brass sides. And I'm going to try a variety of techniques, and we can, you know, I'll share those on the channel. We can see what's what, see what works and what's a waste of time. So a good question is, why not just cut these sides out and use these carriage bodies as they are? Well, I could do, but there's quite a lot of work chopping down lots of them, and I'm not really interested in doing that. But it occurs to me that with a couple of small modifications, I'll be able to reuse all of these bodies. And so the idea, when this is complete, is that I'll use the same underframe, which was the same whether it's a restriction 0 or restriction 1 or restriction 2 or whatever vehicle, but the bodies will be held on magnetically. So rather than waste all of these lovely body shells, which really are quite nice, I've got one I'm going to sacrifice, and that will yield me what I need to continue, and then all of the bodies will still fit on the same chassis, so I will effectively be able to run two different styles of carriage with the same underframe. And once again, thank you to Steve for hooking me up with these. I'm really very grateful indeed. Now whilst I've got these out, I may as well mention the storage boxes. So I made some storage boxes for these just to keep them nice. I wanted to be able to take them out easily and measure them up and what have you, and I don't want to keep putting them in and out of their cardboard boxes that they came in. And so I made these, and at the end of each I made the boxes to fit into one of these standard really useful plastic tubs, and they work well, but there's a bit of sort of free room and these things would run backwards and forwards, and I was going to shove a bit of foam in there, but I made these little boxes and I showed Steve, and he sort of liked the idea, but he said you can't really tell which is which, and it's true, looking from the roof you can't tell which carriage is which. So very quickly I've just engraved on the end of one of these, it's a bit off centre, but each carriage will be labelled with a sort of by printing onto the underside of the little filler block, and that seems to work a treat. And there's a little bit of movement, but they don't rock about much, so that's been those, and I've been quite pleased with how they've turned out. I have enough of these carriages to complete the rake that I wanted, and in fact there are 3 spares, so that's great. It's been particularly handy at the moment as I've been boxing things up to store, because they pack away now really rather nicely. So the other aspect of that Rother Valley Rail Tour project is the construction of the E1 locomotive, which regular viewers will know I've been working on. Now, it was my plan by now to have had that up and running, but again things have got in the way. And the main reason that's been held up is because I decided to go with etched brass for the main frames and the running gear for it, for both the locomotive and the tender. And at the same time I decided I wanted some etched brass work done for the canopy at Bexhill West, and I thought I'd combine both orders in one sort of job lot and get a slightly better price from the supplier. And I haven't finished the design work of some of the bits for the canopy, so that's been held off. What I thought I'd do in the meantime is just get a sort of a commercial chassis and stick under my 3D printed parts just to sort of push the project forward, and that's the plan. And so I'm looking for I think it's a Hornby 2P chassis, which I shall use, and I think that will work. But being mindful of setting all of that up, I thought what I really could do with is some sort of rolling road, and so that's what you could see here. Obviously this engine is not the E1, but this is my attempt at a rolling road on which I'll be able to test that thing. And it's quite interesting. This is a kit built engine. It's really quite well made, but I don't know if the camera will pick it up. You can see there's some wobble on the locomotive part. I think one of the axles is running slightly eccentrically. Now I've got some quite expensive wheel sets for my own E1, and I've put those on here and tested them out, and even the sort of the top quality wheels, there's a bit of eccentricity, and I think I may well do some machining work on those, which will be quite interesting when I get round to it, but that's probably not going to be for a few weeks. But anyway, in the meantime, I've made this rolling road. This will be the subject of a video in its own right, but I just thought I'd show it. It's quite good fun, and it's quite nice to see this engine running nicely. It certainly wasn't a few weeks ago. Anyway, whilst we're here, I'll also mention this. Now, Paul Apps at Sandling Junction asked me if I could come up with some arches for him on his run down to Folkestone Harbour. Viewers of his channel will know what I'm talking about, and rather than come up with something generic, I thought I'd try and model something that sort of a realistic structure. And so this is these are the railway arches at Atlantic Road in Brixton, and this is sort of pretty much exact scale. And back in the day there were shops in here. In fact, there still are shops there now. In fact, I think it was in about 1925, 1926, the platform at Brixton was extended, and there was sort of overhung, the structure overhangs. Those of you who know Atlantic Road in Brixton will know how that looks. I'll try and put a picture of it up on the screen. But this is sort of to the dimensions of how it was back in the day. So this is another little kind of side project that has taken a little bit of time to try and help Paul out. I've not shown this to him yet, so we'll show him this and he will be able to use it. Now he's going to have it, I've built this as a sort of straight run. He will, I think, want it to curve and run downhill, so I'll separate these elements and he'll be able to sort of stagger them and do what he needs to do. But in terms of railway arches, I hope they'll do. And I chose these ones because they were particularly low profile, and I think that will suit what he has in mind. Anyway, that's that. Let's have a look at something else. So then, in my last video I showed the latest iteration of the Ballast Vacuum, and that was quite overwhelming, the response to that. People seem to get it. Now, just as a recap, this was my very first attempt at it, and this device has worked wonderfully. In fact, you can see it's got some battle scars on it from the amount of use it's had. All the ballasting at Bexhill West has been done with this system, but it was just the complexity of this collector head that sort of thought it was a bit over-engineered. And in the last video I sort of over-engineered it in a sense a little bit further with this gadget. Now this works just as well, this works brilliantly. It's just maybe a bit too big for everyone's needs. Now if you've got a workshop, you run power tools, that sort of thing, these type of vacuum separators are great. It's a nice thing to have as a sort of an additional accessory. But if you're working in a spare room or something like that, maybe you don't want something this big hanging around. And I thought, well, is there another way around this? And what else could we try? And so I've tried some more experiments and I've come up with something which is not quite as good. It still does the job, it just does it a little bit slower, but it uses a vacuum or a ballast collector, shall we say, that's just a little bit more accessible, a straightforward bottle. And so what I've come up with is, and it's no rocket science here at all, is a bottle top that's threaded, that screws on top of the bottle, and we can run one side to our vacuum collector and the other side to our vacuum cleaner. Now, in the last video I sort of showed a set of vacuum accessories, kit of parts that gives you the sort of the tools and what have you need to make the connection. That still works on here, and I'll show that in more detail in just a moment. But that's the final iteration. So I'm going to show you this setup operating, and it is slower than what I had previously, but it still works quite effectively. Now, having tested this out, and I've got a huge file. I'm going to show you all of my prototypes in a minute. I've got, I don't know, well, I've got loads of them, shall we say. You'll see in a minute, it's a huge pile of them. But in testing this, I was realising I was filling this thing up with ballast, which was great. I could pour it back in my pot, but it occurred to me, wouldn't it be nice if I could just sprinkle this out on the track? In fact, that's what I was doing. I was pouring it straight out, just kind of practicing. And then I thought, I wonder if there could be a novel little adapter on the top that could do our spreading. And so I've come up with a bottle top with a spreading device which creates the ballast shoulder. Now, this is the only one I've made so far, and I've actually got my measurements a little bit wrong, so you'll see that when I demonstrate it. It's not ideal, but you'll see that it's fairly obvious what doesn't work. So I'm going to modify that, and we'll have a working version probably by tomorrow. But anyway, I thought I'd show you the next step of this, and we'll talk a little bit about how you can get your hands on these parts. This is a sort of a new area for me, and it's a slightly unwelcome distraction. I've got other things to be getting on with, but I'll show you it running, and I'll show you it. I've not shown before how effective it is at removing or vacuuming the ballast up on point work and turnouts. So we'll have a little look at that, and I'll show we're working with some N-gauge track also, and you can judge for yourself whether you think it's a worthwhile idea or not. Okay, so for today's video test we're going to use the 3D printed vacuum collector head, and I'm going to use the hose and one of the fittings from the vacuum accessory kit that I showed in my previous video. Now I'll leave a link to that video in the description down below. So that's going to connect onto the collector head. I'm using a different piece of hose today. So I've got a piece of, this is 10mm internal diameter PVC pipe. I'm going to use the plastic bottle as a collector and the collector cap that I mentioned just now. And I've got the vacuum connector from the accessory kit that I'd showed. And I have been using this with the hose supplied in that kit, but for some reason I've changed it around now. It doesn't really make a difference. Now, on the end of the collector from the connection from the vacuum accessory kit, there's a little valve, and in my experience, if we close this down, in fact if we put some tape over it, totally close it up, we can improve the efficiency of this system. But for now I'm going to leave those valves fully open to make this system as inefficient as possible. And what that means in effect is it's going to actually work a bit slower, but I just want to slow the process down so you can see what's what. So in fact we might try fiddling with that, and if the video doesn't become too long I'll show you what's what. So this is going to connect to the end of my vacuum cleaner, and I'm using a pneumatic Henry vacuum cleaner. So I'm going to put all of this to one side, and this is what I'm going to use to vacuum up the ballast. And I'm going to begin by just tossing the ballast on by hand, and the reason why I'm going to do it that way is because it's in the tub. In a moment when I vacuum some of it up, I'll show the spreader in action, but we'll save that just for a minute. So this is a kind of a Mark 1 test. Let's do this really quickly. And as I've mentioned in previous videos, most people would of course do this with a proper ballasting box. So, but just for the purposes of this video, I'm going to chuck that down, and you can see I've put it on really heavy. In fact, I've not actually put enough on here, so we've got rails pretty well covered. So what I'm going to do is just organise myself here. I'll turn the vacuum cleaner on and we'll have a go at cleaning this up. So that was the process of vacuuming up the ballast, and remember what I said previously, with this new system going into the plastic water bottle, it is a bit slower, but even so it's not too bad. Now what I'm going to do is open up the camera on my phone, and I'm just going to do a little bit of close-up video so you can see how well a job that's done. Now I'm filming that sort of on the main camera so you can see what I'm doing, so there's no sort of trickery going on here. And let's capture a still photo. There's something like that. Okay, so that's the basic process. What I'm now going to do is vacuum all of this material away, and I'll do that with just the hose pipe. Lift it all up and you'll be able to see it collected in the bottle. Now here's an interesting shot. I'm going to show you just vacuuming straight out of this tub into here, and hopefully you'll be able to see how this works. Now the clear or the green plastic bottle sort of obscures things a bit, but hopefully you can see how effective it works. So I'll turn the vacuum cleaner on and I'll just show you. And hopefully that shows you the ballast is collected in the bottle. Okay, so that being done, what we can do now is unscrew the bottle, and this time I'm going to add the spreader head. Now just to reiterate what I said previously, this is a first attempt and I've made this slot. I don't know what I was thinking, it's woefully too big, but you get the idea. So this is sort of prototype number 1. Now let's just check everything is on camera. But let's try that again. Okay, so that's our ballast laid with the shoulder, and I've made that slot too wide, so it's deposited a little bit too much, but that's no bother because we've got our vacuum system here. So if I attach our collector bottle and our vacuum head, and there you go, job done. And so once more I'm going to just get a little video recording of that, and you can see up close how that's worked out. So for this shot I've turned the board around and we can have a look at a piece of point work. And what I'm going to do, because I've got the ballast in the bottle, I'm just going to use the bottle to spread it out. Now, as with my previous demos, I'm deliberately doing this very, very badly. And hopefully you can see that thing is completely buried in ballast. This is far worse a job than I think anybody would ever do, you know, but it just gives it an idea. And in the mechanism, the working blades here, it's completely covered. So let's reconnect our, I'm just going to screw that back into the collector cap. Now this is going to be quite a slow process vacuuming this off, simply because of the sheer volume of the ballast there, but let's have a go. So that's the basic thing done, and once again let's get a photograph, and hopefully the photograph will show that the check rails here are completely clear of ballast. But of course this bit is still full of ballast, so what are we going to do about that? Well, we're just going to give that an extra little working, so let's have a go. We can do this. So as you see, an alternative is just to put the vacuum pipe on, and that's working freely, working beautifully. I might run along and do this just a little bit more here. I think I've just disturbed some ballast. Anyway, there you go, simple job, and of course we can come work around the edges and tidy up the ballast shoulder if that's what we want to do. So how about engage? I've got an engage straight piece of track and a piece of point work. Pretty worst case situation there, I think you'd agree, so let's just see how it does. So that was vacuuming the N-gauge track with the 00 gauge vacuum collector. I have done an N-gauge one of these as well, but this one seems to work seems to work just as well, and it's probably better if you're doing a double track run. You'd be able to hit it in one go. I didn't vacuum this particularly well here because of the proximity to the double O gauge stuff, but even so you can see how nice a job it's done. So there you go, that was an update of the ballast collection system using a drink bottle for the ballast. And of course when we're done, let's get this on camera, I can pour straight from my bottle back to my original tub and nothing is wasted. So I put a lot of time into developing this, and goodness knows how many little prototypes, but all with subtle modifications, and I'm quite pleased now with where the system is at. I didn't show in that series of videos the laser cut version from last time. It works just the same, but does have the benefit of a little bit of extra control on that valve, although I'm doubtful whether that's of any real benefit, to be honest. So we've got laser cut versions, there's 3D printed versions, there's the bottle tops, and I've even, following a suggestion from Chris down in Bognor Regis, a Dyson connector. So if you've got a little handheld Dyson, there is no need for the collection pot at all. This will interface directly with the vacuum accessory kit that I showed in the last video, and that will plug in, so that will just plug straight into your Dyson. So that's an option. Now, as for making these things available, I've got one or two bits I still need to organise, so expect probably a video in, I'm guessing, 2 weeks time, when I'll announce my online shop or whatever system I come up with for letting these out into the world. So there will be laser cut versions, 3D printed versions, there's the nozzle cap if you'd rather go down that route rather than the big filter. There will be these. I don't think I can sell these with a Dyson connector on. It's probably registered design or something, so we might gloss over that for the minute. What else was there? Well, I think that's it. Oh, and of course the 3D files for those who want to 3D print them themselves. So that's enough. Apologies for this taking too long. Let's wrap the video up. Oh, well, there you go. That's it for this week, and I hope you found some of that interesting and hopefully useful. Apologies, the video's got very long. I shall promise on the next one I'll make a short one. Now, before I go, I just want to mention something. I had some correspondence a couple of months back from a gentleman who lives locally to me, Nigel. And Nigel was interested in buying a laser cutter, and he asked me for my thoughts about laser cutters, and I gave him sort of my advice for what it's worth. And I must stress here, I don't consider myself to be an expert at all, but I gave him my thoughts. Anyway, Nigel went off, he probably absorbed what I had to say and ended up doing his own thing, and he's got himself a really sweet little setup now, so you know, well done. He's got a really nice laser cutting outfit, and I think he's getting on with it really very well indeed. Anyway, as a sort of a thank you, or to show me what he'd got up to, he made me this, a little paintbrush stand. Now this is really sweet. I make things like this daily in my day job, and the children at the school I teach will forever sort of coming up with novel little things to entertain them and gifts for their families and friends and stuff. But no one's ever made me anything, and so to get a little paintbrush stand and with Bexhill West written on it, that was a really lovely thing. And so Nigel, if you're watching this, thank you very much indeed. The support from the viewers is always, you know, really encouraging and motivating, and I'm sorry I've sort of let people down with there being a bit of a sort of a delay in this video coming out, but as always I really do appreciate the support, so thank you for watching. Thanks for those of you who've subscribed also, that means a great deal. Anyway, we'll be back into some serious Bexhill West stuff next week, hopefully. If not, it'll be the week after, where we're going to have a look at roof tiling. So till then, take care everyone. Cheerio.